Welcome. My name is Gena Timberman, and you are listening to Timber People, a podcast about people who, like timber, are strong, build and create, who gather us together like fuel that feeds fire. People who support structures of our community that uplift and protect. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm really excited today to welcome my friend Arvo Mikkanen, a Kiowa Comanche attorney who is the president of the Oklahoma Indian Bar Association. Welcome, Arvo.
Welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. We've been friends for many years, and I know that you have been committed to justice throughout Indian country and have been working with tribes for many, many years and have been a part of your cultural community. And I've been really happy to know you and your family over the years and all of the support that you've provided to me and so many others throughout Indian country. Thank you for that.
No problem. It's been a pleasure, and it's something that is an inspiration every day. When I wake up in the morning, I think I need to be doing something. So I've got a lot of balls in the air at all times, it seems.
I love it. And you have that background. I know that you went to Dartmouth College and graduated from Yale Law School, and you have really just put into practice that hard work and commitment to sovereignty in Indian country and for justice for Native people and others. And I know right now a major point of focus is working with the attorneys for the Oklahoma Indian Bar Association as the president, and you've been in this role for many, many years. And I know you have a strong commitment to ensuring that everyone is prepared for the election day and that we understand our voting responsibilities and also our voting rights.
Yes, I think one of the critical things with Native American people, as most people know, unlike other groups in society, what sets us apart is the fact that we have a unique status legally in the American legal system because of our sovereignty, because of the treaties that we made, because of our ongoing relationship with the federal government. We have a particularly important place in our federal system because laws affect us more so than almost any other group in society. And that's why it's critically important that our tribal membership, our Native people, exercise their right to vote and do their homework, have a voting plan so that when we're there on election day, that we actually go out and vote, that we make sure and cast ballots for folks that understand tribal sovereignty, not just at the local level, but at the state and the federal level. So it's not just the president, which is a major issue, of course, this coming election, but there are lots of other lawmakers that affect us on a daily basis.
Right. No, I know that this has been a major commitment. I know you've had different activities throughout the state to educate people. And what do you have on the horizon leading up to the elections?
Well, one of the things that we did this past year, and we've done it in the past, we've worked as an ally, as a partner, as a collaboration group with a number of other entities out there that are focused on the exercising of voting rights. We've worked with a group called Rock the Native Vote. We worked with United Indian Nations in Oklahoma. They have a Warrior Up to Vote initiative. And also in the past, we worked with what's called Election Protection, which is a group of attorneys that came together nationally to make sure that our votes get counted. And most recently, we participated in what's called National Voter Registration Day. That was September 17th. We were able to mobilize about 8 different sites in Oklahoma across Indian country and various tribal locations to try to register people to vote and make sure that they understand what it means to exercise the vote, to register, to request an absentee ballot, and to make sure that their vote counts. And one of the phrases that we've always advocated is when every vote counts, that's what makes the difference. And so that's one thing that we wanted to make sure that tribal people get out and vote because, again, like I said, it affects us more than anyone else in our society.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you have been involved in this initiative over the years. And I know that the opportunities to really understand what needs to take place, what needs to happen at the polls. Can you share with the audience about what to expect on Election Day?
Yes, definitely, particularly in Oklahoma, where we're located. Of course, we got 38 federally recognized tribes. And if you compare Oklahoma to other states, one of the things that really sets us apart, and this is not a good thing, not a good thing at all, is that in Oklahoma, voter participation out of the 50 states, when you look at the people that are eligible to vote compared to the number that actually do vote, we are dead last. We are number 50. And so we have a very low voter participation rate. And there's a variety of reasons for that. So one of the initiatives that we had, of course, was to register people to vote. Now, the question is this, why is Oklahoma lagging so far behind? I think it's a variety of things. One of the first things that Oklahoma does, there's only a handful of states that do this, but there's what's called voter purging. And what happens is if you don't vote in 2 presidential elections, they put you on a list of inactive voters. And again, unlike most constitutional rights, you secure those, you have those, throughout time. But in Oklahoma, they essentially have taken the position, like some other states, if you don't exercise your right to vote, they will kick you off, they will purge you, they will remove you from the voter rolls. And so this happens every odd year. And in the past 3 years in Oklahoma, over 450,000 voters have been purged or removed from the voting rolls. So we wanted to make sure that everybody knew about that so that they could go online to double check to make sure they are still registered to vote. There are some other hurdles that I can talk about that also are of very serious concern in Oklahoma. Unlike other states where you can register on the same day on Election Day and vote, Oklahoma has a series of deadlines, and we can go through those if you'd like to let people know. But there are a series of deadlines and hurdles that we have to jump over in Oklahoma to make sure that our votes count.
I think it'd be great, that the voter purging mystifies me. I mean, can you imagine if we told people that you wouldn't have the right to have your firearm if you haven't shot a bullet in 2 years?
Exactly. It's a very strange position, and oftentimes, and I don't want to get into the political aspect of it, but there's this theory that's promulgated by some of the lawmakers that pass these laws, and it's couched under the term of voter trying to suppress voter fraud. Well, there's really not a lot of voter fraud. That just doesn't happen. But when you fly under that banner and you get these laws passed, then people think, okay, yeah, that's a good thing. Well, again, your constitutional rights should not be use it or lose it, but that's the position that Oklahoma's taken. So that's one of the first things that we were trying to educate people about. They need to go to the Oklahoma voter portal. They can go online and they can check to see if they are still registered to vote. Now, of course, at this point in time, it's too late to register. That deadline came and went. That was October 11th. The deadline to request an absentee ballot has also passed. That was October 21st. So what we suggest to people, hopefully you are registered. If you miss the deadlines, well, go ahead and register now. You can participate in the next election. But everybody needs to have what's called a plan to vote. A plan to vote. Don't just show up at your polling place and don't have an ID, don't have the things that you need ahead of time. One of the tricky things, especially in Oklahoma, is absentee voting. And I can kind of explain that process if you like.
That'd be great.
Okay, so absentee voting, anybody in Oklahoma can vote absentee. You don't have to have a special reason. You don't have to be out of town. You don't have to have a disability or anything like that. Anybody can vote absentee. So if you registered to vote absentee, you will get an absentee ballot in the mail. Now, what's tricky in Oklahoma is that absentee ballot has to be notarized. And a lot of people don't know this. So when you fill out your absentee ballot, there's a barcode on it. There's a series of envelopes. You cast your ballot, and you have to get it notarized. Now, during the pandemic, they waived the notarization requirements, but the notarization requirements are in place now. So let's say you complete your application, seal up all your envelopes, you cast your ballot, then you have to get it notarized. Now, the thing in Oklahoma is each notary, if it's a private notary, can only notarize 20 ballots. So if you walk into a notary and you have no idea how many ballots that they've notarized, if you're number 21, your ballot's going to get kicked out. It's going to get excluded. And a lot of people don't know that. So what do you do about that? Well, you first thing to do is to make sure that the notary that you're going to hasn't notarized more than 20 ballots, or that they've secured a waiver from the election board for whatever county you're registered to vote in. Okay, so that's one way to deal with that. Or in Oklahoma, you can also go to any notary that's at a business that is open 9 to 5 during the day, like a bank, like a library, like a business, and that 20 person limit does not apply to that particular notary. The other thing that's tricky is turning in that ballot. There was a law that was passed about 2 years ago that was passed by the legislature that was signed by Governor Stitt, which prevents anybody else from bringing in your absentee ballot. So let's say you have a family member that's in a nursing home or assisted care facility, your mom, your grandmother, your aunt, whatever, and they've gotten their ballot, they got their absentee ballot, they don't drive anymore. So how are they going to get their ballot to the election board? Well, let's say you're their son or nephew or whatever. You decide to bring that in for them. They ask you, hey, can you bring this into the election board? If you bring that into the election board, you've committed a felony. You cannot have somebody other than the voter bring the ballot to the election board. So question is, what do you do? So you either have to load up that person and bring them to the election board themselves, or you need to mail that ballot ahead of time. Now, Oklahoma does not provide postage for ballots, and there's a series of about 4 or 5 envelopes. So you're going to have to put extra postage on the envelope. You're probably going to have to mail it 10 days ahead of time. So again, this is why you need to have a plan to vote. So you got to make sure you're going to have a notary. You got to make sure to complete it properly. And then you got to make sure that you send it in with enough time that it's going to be received by the election board by election day. Another thing that I tell people, okay, let's say, okay, I've requested an absentee ballot. I've got an absentee ballot. I've already received it. If I were to bring that in, when do you think that it would be due to the election board? By close of business on election day, if I got it there before 7 o'clock? Mm-hmm. Most people would think that. Oklahoma, that's not the case. The ballot has to be turned in the day before election day. So if I brought my absentee ballot in on November 5th, which is election day, they're going to kick it out. They're not going to count it. That's another little thing people don't know about. So your ballot actually has to be there if you bring it in yourself the day before election day. So again, that's another little tricky thing in Oklahoma law that that you need to be aware of. Again, that's why you need to have a plan to vote. The other thing, a lot of people work. Of course, election day, November 5th, is a Tuesday, right? A lot of people are working. So what if you're working during business hours? You can't stand in line for a period of time. People need to know ahead of time, you can request at least 2 hours to vote. Okay, Oklahoma law provides that you can request 2 hours to vote. Now, the thing that you need to do is you need to do that 3 days before the day that you're going in to vote. So if you're going to go vote early on the Wednesday before, or the Thursday before, or the Friday before, you need to already have made that request. So think about that ahead of time. Don't do it at the last minute. And your employer cannot punish you. They are required to give you at least 2 hours of paid leave to exercise your right to vote. The other thing that a lot of people need to double check is to make sure that they know where their polling place is. You can do that on the Oklahoma voter portal. You just put in your name, your birth date. It'll pull up where you are to vote, because those lines, those districts, those precincts change all the time. And so don't assume that you show up at a particular polling place where you voted before, that's the same polling place that you have today. So look, and again, plan ahead of time, see where you're supposed to go to vote. The other thing is voter IDs, okay? When you go to vote in Oklahoma, you have 4 options for a voter ID. And when you walk up to the polling place, whether it be the election board, when you're voting early voting, again, that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or Saturday before Election Day, or actually at your precinct on Election Day, you'll be required to produce a photo ID, federal, state, or tribal. That ID has to have an expiration date. A lot of tribal IDs do not have an expiration date. So check your tribal ID if that's what you're going to use to make sure that it hasn't expired. Now, we've been telling tribes this for a long time. I'm Kiowa, and my tribal ID says expiration date. It says indefinite. So there is no expiration date. So it'll always be valid. So I can use that. Okay, let's say you're concerned about, or you don't have a voter ID, you don't have a photo ID. What you can do is contact the election board, because again, there's 4 options: federal, state, tribal, photo ID with an expiration date, or you can use a voter ID card. And that's a little paper card that the election board sends to you in the mail. You can use that also. Now, let's say you lost your driver's license, or your address has changed or something like that. You don't have it. Do it now. Do it now ahead of time to make sure that you have a request in to get a paper voter ID. And you probably have enough time now. Today's date, you probably could request it and you probably get it in time. So that's the other option, to make sure that you have that ID when you go to vote.
That's great. You know, we talk about the deadlines and the hurdles, the different barriers, and even just transportation. Considering that, I think it's so important that you express about having the voter, your plan to vote, and your action plan, and transportation. And I know that there are challenges in rural areas of the state for people to get to the polls. And what can you say about how one could find out about transportation with tribes or with other areas that could be helpful for them during the times to vote?
Well, again, some tribes, and if there are any tribal members out there or people that work with tribal governments, I would suggest, if you have a tribal transportation system or a casino bus or something like that. Of course, I think it would be very difficult to go on Election Day to go to all the different precincts.
Right.
But if you're going to arrange a travel date, do it on one of the early voting days, because then again, when you vote early on that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or Saturday ahead of time, then you can go to one location. That's going to be at your county election board. And so early voting will start Wednesday, October 30th, and it'll take place 30th, 31st on Halloween or Friday, and that will be from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. You can also vote on Saturday, November 2nd, from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. So you want to make sure and plan ahead of time. If you're going to carpool or something like that, vote early. Don't wait until Election Day, because then, of course, you're going to have more people there. Most people vote on Election Day, so plan ahead of time. And then the other thing, planning ahead of time, it's really important to do some research. Do some research about who you're voting for. Don't just show up and think, oh my gosh, I don't know who these people are. I don't know their name. I kind of heard of this person. I have no idea who they are. I mean, again, that's the last that's the last time that you want to kind of start and try to figure out who am I going to vote for. Again, there are candidates with all kinds of different positions, everything from school board members to state officials, representatives, senators. Figure that out ahead of time. Go online. The League of Women Voters has a voter guide. I saw a very good voter guide from the rural public schools. They put positions together and provided some information. So again, that's part of your voting plan. It's not just to get there, but to make an intelligent choice. That's absolutely critical and important. And again, try to look at what representatives are representing the positions that you think are important, whether it be tribal sovereignty or voting rights or other issues that there's a whole panoply of issues, gun rights, Second Amendment, all kinds of different things. So do some research ahead of time. Don't just get there to the voting booth. You've gone through all this whole process, and then that's the last time that you need to try to figure out who am I going to vote for.
Right. It's important information. Arvo, thank you so much for sharing this incredibly important information at this time. For the listener, again, going to the Oklahoma voter portal and developing your plan to vote. And Arvo Mikkanen, it's been a real pleasure to have you on the show. Is there anything else you'd like to share about voting or about the Oklahoma Indian Bar Association?
Sure. Well, the Indian Bar Association, we're a group of Native American attorneys. Also, we have some non-Indian attorneys who practice Indian law. And again, we're nonpartisan. We're not advocating for any particular position or candidates. Another thing that's very important, and I'm not going to say one way or the other, very important, and this is nonpartisan, is we have certain judges that are up for retention. Do your research about that, because there are some judges, and judges are not supposed to be political. Okay, they're not Democrat, they're not Republican. They are supposed to rule on the law and the facts impartially. So do some research about that to see about retention of some of our judges. There are Supreme Court judges. There are also Court of Appeals judges that are up. So that's another thing to think about ahead of time. Also, a lot of times we get a question about if somebody's been convicted of a felony, can they still vote? In Oklahoma, they can if they've fully served their term. So they're not on probation anymore. They're not on supervised release. They're not on deferred or anything like that. Somebody who's been convicted of a felony absolutely can still vote. They don't have to get any special permission. So a lot of times people will ask me that question. Another thing people will, in terms of registration, sometimes they don't want to register because they think, oh, if I register, then I'm going to get put on a jury or I'm going to get called to jury duty. Jury duty has nothing to do with voter registration lists. That comes from the driver's license. So if you're driving a car, you're probably already in the crosshairs to be called for jury duty. But this is a very important thing that, again, we suggest that people make sure and exercise the right to vote. And this is the phrase that we've been using for many, many years. Every vote counts when you count every vote. And also, if there's a problem at the polls, don't leave. Make sure and cast what's called a provisional ballot. So if there's a problem, you're not on the voter list or something like that, don't just get up and leave. Cast what's called a provisional ballot and then go get the proof, go get your ID, go get whatever information you need to make sure that your vote counts.
Thank you. That's important. And I know that the Oklahoma Indian Bar Association has a Facebook page for keeping up with different news and updates. Is that still active?
Yes, it's Oklahoma Indian Bar Association News. Also, we have a Twitter or X page that you can go to access information. We also have, which is really exciting, we have a new YouTube channel, and we have some information about tribal sovereignty and tribal rights and Indian law, some of the programs that we've done in the past. And we do have one of our YouTube programs talks about some of these voting rights issues. Also, I would suggest if you have any problem at all, there is a national group. And again, this is part of what's called the Election Protection Initiative. It's 1-866-OUR-VOTE, 1-866-OUR-VOTE. So if you have a problem, you need some advice, call that number, or you can Google election protection and it'll give you every kind of information, answers to all your questions if you're stuck and can't get a hold of somebody. Because on election day, you call the election board, no one's going to answer. It's not going to happen. But that's a good resource to keep in mind.
Thank you. Arvo, thank you for the warrior you are and have always been for Indian country, and appreciate your hard work and commitment. Thank you for being on the show. Yakoki.
Aho.
Yakoki. Thank you for joining us. Timber People is brought to you by the Possibilities Podcast platform.